It was a chilly autumn evening in a small suburban neighborhood in the United States. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple. Leaves rustled softly as a gentle breeze whispered through the trees lining the quiet streets. In the distance, the faint sound of children playing had long faded, replaced by the occasional bark of a dog or the hum of a passing car. On this particular evening, something small and fragile was trying to survive unnoticed in the world. Under the old wooden porch of an abandoned house at the end of Maple Street, a tiny kitten shivered. Its fur was matted with dirt, and its big round eyes glistened with both fear and curiosity. The kitten, no older than a few weeks, had been left to fend for itself. Its small meows were barely audible over the wind, but they carried a desperate plea for warmth and safety. As darkness slowly settled in, the kitten cautiously stepped out from under the porch. Every sound seemed enormous to its tiny ears: the rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the soft footsteps of a late-night passerby. The kitten's instinct was survival, yet something deep inside it longed for comfort, for a place where it could feel safe and loved. Meanwhile, across the street, a young woman named Emily was returning home from work. She had always been an animal lover, often stopping to help stray animals she encountered on her way. That evening, she noticed something moving near the abandoned house. Squinting through the dim light, she caught sight of a tiny figure, a small, orange tabby kitten, looking scared and vulnerable. Emily's heart tightened at the sight. She knelt down carefully on the sidewalk, not wanting to frighten the little creature. "Hey there, little one," she whispered softly. The kitten froze for a moment, its tail tucked tightly around its tiny body, unsure if it could trust this stranger. Slowly, with tentative steps, it approached her, drawn by the gentleness in her voice. The first touch was electric in its own tiny way. Emily gently stroked the kitten's soft fur, feeling how fragile and delicate it was. "You poor thing, you must be so hungry and scared," she murmured. She noticed the kitten's ribs were slightly visible, a clear sign that it had been struggling to find food. Emily quickly checked her backpack and found a small packet of dry cat food she usually carried for such encounters. Carefully, she placed a little on the ground. The kitten sniffed it cautiously, then hesitated. Hunger won over fear, and soon it was nibbling the food with trembling little paws. As the night deepened, Emily knew she couldn't leave the kitten there. The streets weren't safe, especially for such a tiny creature. She gently scooped it into a soft blanket she had in her car and whispered reassuring words as if the kitten could understand every word. "You're safe now, little one. Let's get you somewhere warm." Driving home, Emily thought about all the tiny lives in the neighborhood that went unnoticed, struggling silently. She had rescued strays before, but each story felt personal, each little life a reminder of kindness and responsibility. The kitten, sensing the warmth and the gentle rhythm of the car, slowly relaxed. Its tiny body, once tense with fear, began to curl into a ball, finding a little comfort in Emily's caring arms. By the time they reached Emily's apartment, the kitten had already started purring, a soft, tentative sound that grew stronger as it realized it was finally in a safe place. Emily prepared a small bed in a quiet corner of her living room, complete with a soft blanket and a tiny bowl of water. She placed the kitten inside, watching as it explored its new surroundings with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Emily knew that the journey had just begun. This little stray had a long road ahead, one filled with love, care, and maybe even a few lessons in trust. But for tonight, the kitten was safe, warm, and beginning to understand what it meant to be loved. As she sat on the couch, sipping her tea, Emily smiled softly at the tiny creature. "You're not alone anymore. I'll take care of you." And for the first time in weeks, the little kitten felt a glimmer of hope in a world that had seemed so harsh and unkind. The tiny stray kitten's first night in Emily's apartment was filled with uncertainty, curiosity, and small moments of comfort that began to shape its journey from fear to trust. Emily carefully placed the kitten on the soft blanket she had arranged in the corner of her living room. The little creature looked so fragile against the backdrop of the cozy apartment. Its fur was still messy and tangled, its eyes wide open as if every sound, every shadow could mean danger. The living room was warm, lit by a single lamp that glowed softly in the corner. Emily wanted to keep the environment calm and quiet, knowing that the kitten's world had just turned upside down. For a stray that had only known the cold streets, dark nights, and the constant search for food, this was an entirely new reality. The kitten's small nose twitched as it sniffed the blanket, then the wooden floor, and finally the little bowl of water nearby. Its movements were hesitant, each paw placed cautiously, as if unsure whether the ground beneath it was safe. Emily watched silently from the couch, not wanting to overwhelm the kitten. She knew trust wasn't something that happened in an instant. It had to be earned slowly, patiently. After a few moments of sniffing and circling around, the kitten let out a soft, questioning meow. It was the kind of sound that tugged at the heart, an uncertain call, asking if this place was truly safe. Emily leaned forward just slightly and replied in the gentlest voice she could manage. "It's okay, little one. You're safe here." The kitten paused, as if listening, then turned its head in her direction. Its greenish-golden eyes met hers for a brief second before darting away again. Still wary, still unsure. Emily had read before that stray kittens often carried invisible scars, not just the ones on their tiny bodies but the ones in their hearts. A life on the streets taught them to be cautious, to expect danger at every corner. That first night, Emily promised herself that she would give this kitten the time, space, and love it needed. She placed a small dish of warm milk nearby, and the aroma seemed to stir something deep inside the kitten. It approached cautiously, lowering its head and taking the first tentative sip. Emily couldn't help but smile as she heard the faint sound of its tiny tongue lapping at the milk. To her, this wasn't just a kitten drinking, it was a fragile creature beginning to accept kindness. After finishing the milk, the kitten licked its whiskers and sat back, curling its tail neatly around its body. It let out a tiny sneeze, then shook its head as if embarrassed. Emily chuckled softly. "Bless you, sweetheart," she whispered. Hours passed, and the quiet night deepened. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, the apartment remained peaceful. Emily dozed lightly on the couch, keeping one eye open in case the kitten needed her. Around midnight, she stirred and noticed something that melted her heart. The kitten had left its blanket corner and climbed onto the edge of the couch. At first, it sat at a distance, watching her carefully. Its small body trembled, but it seemed drawn to her warmth. Slowly, inch by inch, it moved closer until it curled up near her arm. Emily hardly dared to move. She simply smiled and whispered, "Good job, little one. You're brave." The kitten tucked its head against the blanket and, for the first time since she had found it, began to purr softly. The sound was delicate, hesitant at first, then stronger as the kitten realized no harm would come. To Emily, that sound was more precious than anything. It was the beginning of trust. As the night went on, Emily thought about what the kitten's life must have been before this moment. Had it been abandoned? Born to a stray mother who couldn't care for it? Had it known kindness before, or was this the very first time? She wondered about the struggles it had faced in those first fragile weeks of life. The idea of such a tiny creature being left alone in a cold, harsh world broke her heart. By dawn, soft rays of sunlight began to fill the apartment. Emily awoke to find the kitten nestled against her side, its tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. For a moment, she simply watched, feeling grateful that fate had placed this little soul in her path. She reached out and gently stroked its back, careful not to disturb its rest. The kitten stirred slightly but did not move away. It had chosen her, at least for now. That morning, Emily began planning the next steps. She knew the kitten needed a visit to the veterinarian, vaccinations, a checkup, and perhaps treatment for fleas or worms. She also needed to get proper kitten food, a litter box, and maybe a few toys. Raising a kitten was a responsibility, but it was one she welcomed with an open heart. Before heading to the pet store, Emily prepared a small breakfast of soft, wet cat food. At first, the kitten only sniffed it cautiously, but soon hunger took over. Watching it eat, Emily felt a surge of happiness. Every bite meant strength, growth, and a step closer to health. As she sipped her coffee, Emily spoke softly to the kitten, even though she knew it couldn't fully understand her words. "You don't have to worry anymore. From now on, you'll always have food, warmth, and love. I promise." The kitten looked up at her, its face still messy from breakfast, and let out a tiny meow, as if answering her promise with a promise of its own. And so, the little stray's first night turned into its first morning in a safe home. It was the start of a new life, one filled with second chances, gentle care, and the slow but certain building of trust. The journey was only beginning, but in that moment, both Emily and the kitten knew they had found something special, each other. The next morning began with the soft glow of sunlight filtering through Emily's apartment curtains. The little kitten stirred awake from its warm nest on the couch, stretching its tiny paws as if testing this new world once again. Its eyes blinked slowly, adjusting to the light, before focusing on Emily, who was already awake and quietly sipping her coffee. "Good morning, sweetheart," Emily said softly, setting her mug down. She leaned forward and gave the kitten a gentle scratch under its chin. To her delight, the kitten didn't flinch this time. Instead, it let out a faint purr, still fragile, but a little more confident than the night before. Today, however, was going to be an important day. Emily knew that the kitten needed more than food and a blanket. It needed proper medical attention. The streets were full of dangers for stray animals, fleas, worms, infections, and worse. She wanted to make sure this little soul would grow strong and healthy. "All right, little one," she said, her voice calm but determined. "We're going to see the doctor today. Don't worry, I'll be with you the whole time." Preparing for the trip, Emily placed a soft towel inside a small pet carrier she had from her previous rescue experiences. The carrier looked big compared to the kitten, but she wanted it to feel as comfortable as possible. The kitten, however, was not impressed. The moment Emily tried to guide it inside, it resisted with all its tiny strength. Paws spread wide, tail fluffed up, and a nervous meow that almost sounded like protest. Emily chuckled softly. I know. You don't understand yet, but this is for your own good. She wrapped the kitten gently in the towel, murmuring soothing words, and carefully placed it inside the carrier. The kitten's big eyes stared at her from behind the mesh door, filled with both fear and confusion. The car ride was a whole new adventure. Every bump in the road, every passing car, made the kitten shift nervously inside the carrier. Its meows were soft but constant, a plea for reassurance. Emily reached one hand through the small opening, letting the kitten press its nose against her fingers. I'm right here, she whispered. You're safe. The veterinary clinic. When they arrived at the veterinary clinic, the waiting room was already alive with sounds and smells that overwhelmed the tiny kitten. Dogs barked, birds chirped in cages, and the scent of disinfectant lingered in the air. The kitten pressed itself against the corner of the carrier, ears flat against its head. Emily sat down with the carrier on her lap, softly stroking the side of it. Don't be scared, little one. It's just for a short while. Soon, the veterinarian, a kind woman named Dr. Harris, called them in. She smiled warmly at Emily before crouching down to peek inside the carrier. Well, who do we have here? She said in a cheerful voice. Emily carefully lifted the kitten out and placed it on the exam table. The kitten froze, its tiny claws gripping the surface nervously. Dr. Harris moved slowly, letting the kitten sniff her gloved fingers before beginning her examination. She's very young, Dr. Harris observed, gently checking the kitten's teeth and ears. Probably around 6 weeks old. A little underweight, but that's to be expected for a stray. Emily nodded, concern in her eyes. I found her near an abandoned house. She was so thin and scared. Dr. Harris continued her examination, using a stethoscope to listen to the kitten's tiny heartbeat. Her heart sounds good. Lungs are clear. She does have a few fleas, but that's easy to treat. I'll give her a deworming medication, a flea treatment, and we'll start her vaccination schedule today. Emily stroked the kitten's back as the doctor prepared the vaccines. It's okay, baby, she whispered. I know this part won't be fun, but it's important. The kitten let out a sharp, startled meow as the first needle went in, its little body trembling. Emily held it gently but firmly, whispering soothing words until the ordeal was over. There we go, Dr. Harris said reassuringly. All done. She's a healthy little girl, just needs some care and nutrition. You're doing the right thing by bringing her in so early. Back home. On the drive home, the kitten was quieter than before. It was as if the experience at the vet had worn it out. Nestled against the soft towel, it closed its eyes and rested, trusting that Emily would guide it safely back. Once home, Emily opened the carrier and watched as the kitten cautiously stepped out. Instead of darting to a corner as it had before, it slowly walked toward her and rubbed its tiny head against her leg. Emily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This was the kitten's way of saying thank you, or perhaps simply acknowledging that Emily was now its source of comfort. She scooped the kitten into her arms, holding it close against her chest. You were so brave today, she whispered, kissing the top of its head. The kitten purred softly, its body finally beginning to relax after the stressful morning. Emily placed the kitten back on its soft blanket and brought out a small toy she had purchased earlier, a little stuffed mouse with a bell inside. At first, the kitten only sniffed it cautiously, but soon curiosity took over. It batted the toy with its paw, then pounced clumsily, making the bell jingle. Emily laughed, delighted to see the tiny creature showing signs of playfulness. That evening, as Emily cooked her dinner, she noticed the kitten following her around the kitchen. Its little paws patted softly against the floor, tail held slightly higher than before. It was still cautious, but clearly beginning to explore its new world with a bit more confidence. After dinner, Emily sat on the couch with a blanket draped over her legs. The kitten climbed up without hesitation this time, curling into her lap. It purred louder than ever before, as if declaring that it had finally chosen its place of safety. Emily stroked the kitten gently and whispered, You don't know it yet, but you've changed my life too. We're going to take care of each other. And as the night settled in, with the kitten sleeping peacefully on her lap, Emily realized that this tiny stray had already become a part of her family. The road ahead would be filled with challenges and responsibilities, but also with joy, love, and the kind of bond that only grows between a rescued animal and the human who gives it a second chance. The days after the vet visit marked the beginning of a new chapter in the little kitten's life. For the first time since it had opened its eyes to the world, it wasn't waking up on cold pavement or hidden under a porch. Instead, it woke to the soft comfort of a blanket, the gentle hum of Emily's apartment, and the reassuring presence of someone who cared. On the third morning, Emily was greeted by the sound of a small, high-pitched meow. She opened her eyes to find the kitten sitting near her pillow, staring at her with curious eyes. Its tiny tail flicked back and forth, as if trying to say, "Wake up, I'm ready to explore." Emily chuckled softly. "Good morning, sunshine. Looks like you're starting to feel at home." Exploring the apartment. That morning, Emily decided it was time to let the kitten explore beyond its little corner of the living room. She opened the door to the hallway, and the kitten cautiously peeked out, ears perked and whiskers twitching. The hardwood floor felt cool under its tiny paws, and every step was taken with careful calculation. The hallway seemed endless to the kitten. It stopped every few steps to sniff the baseboards, to paw at a speck of dust, or to tilt its head at a painting hanging on the wall. Emily followed at a distance, letting the kitten take the lead. The kitchen was the first big discovery. The kitten sat by the refrigerator, listening curiously to the low hum it made. Then, with kitten-like boldness, it pounced on a stray bottle cap that Emily had dropped earlier, batting it across the tiles as though it were the most exciting toy in the world. Emily laughed, her heart swelling at the sight. It doesn't take much to make you happy, does it? The bedroom was next. The bed seemed like a mountain to the little creature. After circling it twice, it made a daring leap onto the blanket, landing with a soft thud. Pleased with its success, the kitten began to knead the blanket with its tiny paws, purring loudly. Emily knew that this was a sign of comfort, a kitten's way of remembering the warmth of its mother. Litter training. Exploration was important, but so was teaching responsibility. Emily had set up a small litter box in a quiet corner of the bathroom, filled with soft, unscented litter. She carried the kitten gently over to it and placed it inside. At first, the kitten didn't understand. It sniffed the box, pawed at the litter, and then jumped right out again. Emily smiled patiently. She knew this would take time. Throughout the day, she kept returning the kitten to the litter box after meals, gently scratching the litter with her fingers to show what it was for. The kitten watched curiously, then imitated the motion with its paw. By the evening, progress was made. The kitten finally used the litter box properly, and Emily clapped softly, praising it. "Good job, baby. You're so smart," she said with genuine joy. The kitten, unaware of the magnitude of its achievement, simply meowed and walked away proudly, tail held high like a tiny flag of victory. Playtime and bonding. As the days passed, the kitten's energy grew. It chased after toy mice, pounced on balls of yarn, and even attacked the shadow of its own tail with fierce determination. Emily spent hours on the floor, playing with it, laughing at its clumsy jumps and tiny tumbles. But playtime wasn't just about fun, it was about building trust. Every time the kitten batted at her hand without claws, every time it rolled onto its back to expose its tiny belly, it was telling Emily, "I trust you more than I trust the world." One evening, after a long play session, the kitten climbed onto Emily's lap, stretched itself out, and fell asleep instantly. Emily stroked its fur gently, marveling at how quickly this fragile life had gone from a trembling stray to a trusting little companion. "You're part of the family now," she whispered, almost to herself. "You belong here." Quiet moments. Not every moment was playful. Sometimes, the kitten would sit by the window, watching the outside world it had once been a part of. The streetlights, the passing cars, the occasional barking dog, it all seemed familiar yet distant. Emily often wondered if the kitten remembered those nights of hunger and fear. She would sit beside it, sipping tea, and say softly, "That world is behind you now. This is your home." The kitten would turn its head slightly, blink slowly, a cat's way of showing affection, and press its nose against the glass before returning to its blanket. Building a routine. Within a week, Emily and the kitten had developed a routine. Mornings were for breakfast and play. Afternoons often meant naps in the warm patch of sunlight on the rug. Evenings were for cuddles on the couch, watching TV together, and sometimes falling asleep side by side. Emily had even given the kitten a name, something she had been waiting for until she felt the right moment. One night, as the kitten batted happily at a toy feather, Emily whispered, "You're such a brave little fighter. I think I'll call you Clover. Because like a four-leaf clover, you're rare and lucky." The kitten meowed as if approving the name. From that moment on, it wasn't just the stray kitten, it was Clover, a member of Emily's family. A new sense of belonging. As Clover curled up in Emily's lap one night, purring louder than ever, Emily realized how much had changed in such a short time. Just a week ago, this tiny soul had been lost, hungry, and afraid. Now, it had a home, a name, and someone who loved it. And for Clover, the world no longer felt cold and hostile. It had warmth, safety, and a place to belong. The journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges ahead, vaccinations to finish, lessons to learn, and fears to overcome. But for now, in the soft glow of the living room lamp, Emily and Clover were exactly where they were meant to be, together. Clover had been in Emily's apartment for over a week now, and each day brought new discoveries. The once scared stray was now a curious little explorer, darting around corners, chasing imaginary prey, and proudly climbing onto every surface that seemed like a challenge. But while Emily's apartment provided comfort and safety, Clover's instincts reached further. There was a whole world beyond those windows and doors, a world of smells, sounds, and creatures that called out to her in ways Emily couldn't fully understand. Curiosity at the window. One crisp morning, Emily opened the curtains to let the sunlight in. Clover immediately leaped onto the windowsill, her tiny paws pressing against the glass. Outside, the neighborhood bustled with life. A flock of birds landed on a nearby tree, chirping loudly. Clover's pupils widened, her tail flicking rapidly as she crouched low, preparing for a pounce she could never complete through the glass. Emily chuckled. "Oh, Clover, you're a little hunter, aren't you?" The kitten let out a series of excited chirps, a sound cats often make when watching prey they can't reach. She pawed at the window, frustrated that the birds remained out of reach. Emily reached down to stroke her back. "Someday, maybe, but not today. You're still too little for the outside world." Clover pressed her nose against the glass, fogging it with her breath. For a few long minutes, she remained completely mesmerized by the birds, her whole body trembling with excitement. Emily realized that this was a new stage in Clover's life, the discovery that the world was much bigger than just four walls. Meeting the outside, through the door. Later that afternoon, Emily decided to take the trash outside. As she opened the front door, Clover dashed toward it with surprising speed, slipping between her legs before Emily could react. "Clover!" Emily exclaimed, dropping the bag and rushing after her. The hallway was quiet, but to Clover, it must have seemed like a vast new land. She froze for a moment, ears twitching at the distant sound of footsteps echoing down the stairwell. Then, with a burst of energy, she padded forward, sniffing the carpet and staring at the closed apartment doors. Emily carefully approached, not wanting to scare her. "Hey, baby, slow down. This isn't safe yet." She crouched and extended her hand. Clover turned her head, torn between curiosity and caution. Finally, after a few hesitant steps, she allowed Emily to scoop her up. Emily held her close, feeling the kitten's rapid heartbeat. "Not so fast, little adventurer," she whispered, smiling despite her worry. "The world out here is big and noisy. You'll get your chance, but not today." A visitor from the outside. That evening, something unexpected happened. Emily's neighbor, Mrs. Parker, stopped by for a chat. She was an older woman with kind eyes and a soft voice, and she often fed the stray cats around the neighborhood. When she saw Clover, her face lit up. "Oh, Emily, you've taken in that little one. I remember seeing her near the old porch. Poor thing looked so hungry back then." Emily smiled proudly. "Yes, this is Clover. She's doing much better now." Clover sniffed Mrs. Parker's hand cautiously, then rubbed against it, surprising Emily. "Well, aren't you a friendly little lady?" Mrs. Parker laughed. Their conversation was interrupted by a sound from the hallway. Mrs. Parker's dog, Max, a gentle golden retriever, had followed her to the door. Clover froze at the sight of the large creature. Her back arched, fur puffed out, and a tiny hiss escaped her throat. Emily quickly stroked Clover, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. He won't hurt you." Max wagged his tail and sat down, clearly uninterested in scaring the kitten. He simply gave a curious sniff and let out a soft woof. Clover's eyes widened, but after a few tense moments, she slowly lowered her back, though her tail remained puffed. Emily laughed softly. "That's your first dog, Clover. Quite the introduction." Mrs. Parker smiled warmly. "Don't worry, she'll get used to him. Max is as gentle as they come." As the door closed behind their visitors, Clover looked up at Emily with wide eyes, as if asking, "What was that huge creature?" Emily kissed the top of her head. "That was a dog. And yes, the world has all kinds of animals in it. You'll meet them when you're ready." Nighttime curiosity. That night, Clover couldn't seem to settle down. She kept returning to the window, staring out at the streetlights and listening to the faint sounds of crickets and distant barking. She pawed at the glass again, meowing softly. Emily joined her by the window, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "I know you're curious," she whispered. "I know part of you wants to explore every corner of this world. And you will, just not yet. You're still growing, still learning. For now, this home is your safe place." Clover blinked slowly at her, then curled against Emily's side. Together, they sat by the window, one woman and one kitten, both gazing out at the vast world that awaited them. A new kind of bond. Over the next few days, Emily noticed changes in Clover. She wasn't just a rescued stray anymore. She was developing a personality. Bold yet cautious, playful yet thoughtful. She had favorite spots: the top of the couch, the warm patch of sunlight near the window, and Emily's lap. She began to greet Emily at the door after work, meowing insistently as if demanding attention. And though she was small, Clover had already become a guardian of the apartment. Whenever she heard footsteps in the hallway, she ran to the door, ears perked, ready to investigate. Emily often thought about how much Clover had changed her life in such a short time. What had started as a simple rescue had become a partnership, a friendship, and something deeper, an unspoken bond of trust and love. The adventure to come. One evening, as Clover batted at her toy mouse, Emily whispered, "You know, one day, I'll take you outside safely. Maybe a little harness, maybe a small trip to the park. The world won't seem so scary then. But for now, little Clover, your biggest adventure is learning to grow." Clover paused her play, looked up at Emily, and let out a soft, affectionate meow. It was as if she understood. And so, the little stray kitten who had once shivered under a porch was now standing at the threshold of new adventures. The world outside still called to her, and Emily knew she couldn't keep her curiosity contained forever. But when the time came, Clover wouldn't face it alone. She would face it with love, guidance, and the safety of home. For now, she was exactly where she needed to be. The days were growing warmer, and the air outside carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Clover had now been with Emily for almost a month, and her transformation was remarkable. No longer a frail, trembling stray, she had become a lively, affectionate kitten with a spark of adventure in her eyes. Every day, Clover sat by the window, pressing her little paws against the glass, watching the world unfold beyond it. Birds, squirrels, passing cars, and even children walking home from school all fascinated her. Her tail swished restlessly as if she were waiting for the moment when she could finally step into that vast, mysterious world. Emily noticed. And though she worried about the dangers, she also knew Clover's curiosity couldn't be contained forever. Preparing the harness. One Saturday morning, Emily returned home with a small paper bag. Clover immediately padded over to investigate, her nose twitching as she sniffed the bag. Emily laughed. "Curious, aren't you? Well, this is for you." Inside was a tiny, adjustable harness in soft lavender fabric, with a matching leash. Emily had spent hours researching, determined to find the safest, most comfortable option for her little adventurer. She sat on the rug and let Clover sniff the harness. The kitten pawed at it, then batted at the dangling leash, treating it like a new toy. Emily smiled. "Not a toy, sweetheart. This is your ticket to the outside world." The first attempt to put the harness on did not go smoothly. Clover wriggled and squirmed, meowing in protest. Emily laughed gently, stroking her fur. "I know it feels weird. But trust me, you'll get used to it." Over the next few days, Emily introduced Clover slowly. She let her wear the harness inside the apartment for just a few minutes at a time, always rewarding her with gentle praise and a small treat afterward. Clover wasn't thrilled at first, but soon she tolerated it, realizing that Emily's encouragement meant it couldn't be all bad. By the end of the week, Clover no longer fought against it. She strutted around the living room with the harness on, tail high, as if showing off her new outfit. The first step outside. Finally, the big day arrived. Emily clipped the leash onto Clover's harness and opened the apartment door. Clover hesitated at the threshold, her ears twitching as a wave of unfamiliar scents and sounds rushed in. The faint smell of fresh-cut grass, the distant chatter of neighbors, the rumble of a car engine outside. Emily crouched beside her, whispering softly, "It's okay, baby. I'm right here. Let's take it slow." Clover placed one paw outside the door, then quickly pulled it back. She sat down, eyes wide, clearly unsure. Emily didn't rush her. She simply waited, offering quiet encouragement. After a few long moments, Clover gathered her courage and stepped into the hallway. Her little paws patted softly against the carpet, her tail low but twitching. She sniffed the walls, peeked into corners, and flinched slightly when a door closed in the distance. But Emily was there, holding the leash gently, never tugging, letting Clover set the pace. Discovering the outdoors. When they reached the building's front door, Emily pushed it open. The outside world unfolded in a burst of sunlight, fresh air, and endless possibilities. Clover froze, overwhelmed by the sheer size of it all. The grass swayed in the breeze, birds darted across the sky, and every sound seemed magnified to her sensitive ears. Emily lowered the carrier blanket she had brought, placing it on the ground just in case Clover needed a safe spot. Then, she set Clover down gently on the edge of the grass. At first, Clover crouched low, her belly almost touching the ground, ears flat against her head. She sniffed the air cautiously, her little nose twitching furiously as she processed the avalanche of new scents, earth, flowers, even the faint aroma of someone grilling lunch nearby. Then, slowly, her fear gave way to curiosity. She stretched out a paw and touched the grass. The sensation was new, soft yet ticklish under her toes. She blinked, tilted her head, then stepped forward again. Within minutes, she was exploring a small patch of grass, pawing at a dandelion that swayed in the breeze. When a butterfly fluttered past, she crouched into a playful stance, wiggling her tiny body before leaping forward, missing the butterfly entirely but landing with an adorable tumble. Emily laughed, clapping softly. "Good try, Clover. You're a natural little explorer." Challenges along the way. Not everything was easy. A sudden car door slamming nearby startled Clover, sending her darting back toward Emily, pressing against her leg for safety. Emily knelt down, stroking her gently. "It's okay, baby. The world can be loud, but you're safe with me." After a few minutes of reassurance, Clover ventured out again, a little braver than before. Each step was a balance between caution and courage, but with Emily by her side, she kept moving forward. They stayed outside for nearly 20 minutes, exploring just the front yard of the building. Clover sniffed every flower she could reach, chased after shadows, and even attempted to climb the base of a small tree before Emily gently lifted her away. Back home. When they finally returned to the apartment, Clover trotted in proudly, tail held high as if she had conquered the world. She leaped onto the couch, sat down, and began grooming herself with intense focus, as though cleaning up after such an important adventure. Emily sat beside her, smiling softly. "You were so brave today. I'm proud of you, Clover." That evening, Clover was more affectionate than usual. She curled into Emily's lap, purring loudly, pressing her little head against her chest. It was as if she understood that Emily had given her a gift, not just safety and love, but the chance to see the world in a way she had never known before. The beginning of new adventures. From that day on, short outdoor walks became part of Clover's routine. Each trip revealed something new, the flutter of leaves, the buzz of bees, the warm feel of the sun on her fur. And with every outing, she grew a little braver, a little stronger, and a little more confident. Emily often thought about the night she had first found Clover, small, shivering, alone under a porch. Looking at her now, exploring the world with wide eyes and a brave little heart, Emily realized how far they had both come. Life with Clover was no longer just about survival. It was about discovery, growth, and the shared joy of new experiences. And though Clover's first adventure outside had been filled with hesitation, it was only the beginning of many journeys to come, journeys she would never face alone again. The sun was shining brightly on a Sunday morning, and the warm air promised a beautiful day. Emily sat by the window sipping her coffee while Clover perched beside her, tail flicking back and forth as she watched the world outside. The little kitten had grown bolder with each of her short outdoor adventures, and her eyes now sparkled with a kind of curiosity that could no longer be contained by the small patch of grass in front of the apartment. Emily chuckled, stroking Clover's head. "You want more, don't you? You've conquered the front yard, little one. I think it's time we see something bigger." That afternoon, Emily placed the lavender harness over Clover's tiny shoulders, clipped on the leash, and packed a small tote bag with essentials: water, a soft blanket, a collapsible food dish, and a favorite toy. "Just in case," she whispered, giving Clover's nose a little tap. Clover meowed back, as if she understood this was no ordinary outing. The journey begins. The ride to the park was short, but for Clover it felt like a whole new adventure. Sitting in her secure carrier on the passenger seat, she pressed her nose against the mesh window, eyes wide at the blur of colors and movement outside. Cars zoomed past, people crossed streets, and the endless stretch of sky seemed both exciting and overwhelming. Emily kept her voice soft and calm, occasionally reaching through the top opening to stroke Clover's fur. "Almost there, sweetheart. You'll love it, I promise." When they arrived, the park was alive with activity, children laughing, dogs barking, joggers moving along the paths, and the distant sound of a fountain spraying water into the air. Clover crouched low inside her carrier, overwhelmed by the chorus of new sounds. Emily lifted the carrier carefully, placed it on a shaded bench, and whispered, "Take your time. The world is big, but I'm right here." First steps into the park. After a few moments, Emily opened the carrier and gently set Clover on the blanket by her feet. The kitten stayed low to the ground at first, her ears twitching, her little body tense. The smell of freshly cut grass mixed with the sweetness of blooming flowers, and Clover's nose wiggled furiously as she tried to take it all in. A butterfly fluttered nearby, catching her attention. Slowly, her fear gave way to curiosity. She stretched one paw forward, then another, and soon she was following the butterfly into the grass, her tail twitching in excitement. Emily smiled, watching her kitten take those brave little steps. "That's my girl," she murmured, meeting new sights and sounds. As they walked along the park path, Clover's senses were in overdrive. She pawed at fallen leaves, sniffed at tree roots, and leapt backward when a squirrel darted across their path. Emily laughed softly, kneeling to reassure her. "Don't worry, that little guy is faster than both of us." The most challenging moment came when they encountered a dog for the first time. A golden retriever, friendly and wagging its tail, trotted by with its owner. Clover froze, her fur puffing up, eyes wide. She pressed herself close to Emily's legs, clearly unsure whether this giant creature was friend or foe. Emily scooped her up gently, whispering into her fur. "It's okay, baby. Not every animal is scary. You're safe with me." The dog barked once, but was quickly led away by its owner, leaving Clover to settle back into Emily's arms. Her little body trembled at first, but after a few minutes she relaxed, peeking out from the safety of Emily's embrace. Curiosity wins. With time, Clover grew braver. She padded along the walking path, stopping to sniff wildflowers and batting playfully at stray feathers floating in the breeze. Children pointed at her, whispering excitedly, "Look, a kitten on a leash." Some even asked if they could pet her, but Emily politely declined, knowing Clover wasn't quite ready for strangers yet. Instead, Clover's world expanded in small, manageable steps. She discovered the cool shade beneath a bench, the crunch of gravel under her paws, and the mysterious ripples of the pond where ducks swam lazily across the water. Her eyes were wide with wonder, reflecting the sunlight like tiny golden lanterns. At one point, Clover crouched low, fixating on a robin hopping across the grass. She wiggled her hindquarters, preparing to pounce, but the bird flew away just as she leapt forward. She landed clumsily, rolling onto her side before hopping back up, clearly determined not to let embarrassment stop her. Emily laughed, clapping her hands softly. "Nice try, little hunter." A moment of connection. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Emily and Clover found a quiet spot beneath a large oak tree. Emily spread the blanket and sat down while Clover nestled beside her, tired but still alert, her ears twitching at every sound. Emily stroked her fur gently. "You've come such a long way, Clover. From that scared little kitten under the porch to this brave explorer at the park. I'm so proud of you." Clover purred loudly, pressing her head into Emily's hand. She kneaded the blanket with her tiny paws, a sign of comfort and trust. For Emily, the moment was almost overwhelming. This kitten wasn't just her pet, she was family, a companion who had turned Emily's quiet apartment into a place filled with life and laughter. Heading home. After nearly an hour of exploration, Clover was ready to return. She padded willingly back into her carrier, curling up as if she knew the adventure had been enough for one day. On the ride home, she dozed off, her tiny body rising and falling with each soft breath. Emily glanced over at her sleeping kitten and whispered, "Sweet dreams, my little adventurer." When they arrived back at the apartment, Clover stretched, yawned, and immediately curled up on the couch as though she had conquered the entire world. Her paws twitched in her sleep, perhaps chasing butterflies and birds in her dreams. The promise of more. That night, Emily reflected on the day's events. Taking Clover to the park hadn't just been about giving her freedom, it had been about trust. Clover had trusted Emily to keep her safe in a world that was far bigger and louder than anything she had ever known. And Emily, in turn, had trusted Clover's courage to take each step forward, no matter how small. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives together. The park was just the first of many places Clover would explore, and Emily knew that with each adventure, their bond would only grow stronger. As Clover purred softly in her sleep, Emily whispered, "Today the park, tomorrow the world." And with that promise, both kitten and human drifted into dreams of endless possibilities. The morning sunlight streamed gently through the curtains, and Clover stretched luxuriously on the windowsill, her paws reaching high above her head. Emily smiled as she watched her kitten bask in the warmth of the new day. Clover had grown so much in the past few weeks. Her fur had become softer and shinier, her eyes brighter, and her playful energy seemed endless. But Emily knew that part of being a responsible pet parent meant more than playtime and cuddles. Today was the day Clover would experience something new, something every pet must go through at some point, her very first visit to the veterinarian. Preparing for the big day, Emily set out Clover's carrier, the same one they had used for the trip to the park. Clover eyed it suspiciously, her tail flicking back and forth as though she already knew an adventure was about to begin. Emily crouched down and spoke gently. "Don't worry, baby. This is just to make sure you stay healthy and strong." To make the carrier more inviting, Emily placed Clover's favorite blanket inside, along with a small toy mouse. She also sprinkled a bit of catnip in the corner, hoping it would help Clover feel at ease. Clover sniffed at the entrance, circled it once, and then stepped inside cautiously. Emily smiled with relief. "Good girl, Clover. You're braver than you think." The car ride. The car ride this time felt different from the trip to the park. The air inside the vehicle was quieter, more serious. Clover pressed her nose against the mesh window, but instead of excitement, there was hesitation in her wide eyes. The world outside rushed past in blurs of green and gray, but she seemed less interested in the scenery and more in the unknown waiting ahead. Emily reached back to slide her fingers through the opening, brushing Clover's fur. "You're okay, sweetheart. It's just a little checkup. Nothing scary." Clover gave a tiny meow, almost questioning, and then settled down onto her blanket, her small body vibrating with a soft purr that was both comfort-seeking and comforting in itself. Arriving at the clinic. When they arrived at the veterinarian's office, Clover's ears twitched nervously at the new smells and sounds. The waiting room was filled with activity, dogs barking, cats meowing softly from their carriers, and the rustle of papers as the receptionist checked in clients. Emily carried Clover's carrier to an empty seat and set it down on the chair beside her. Clover crouched low inside, her golden eyes scanning the unfamiliar room. A large golden retriever wagged its tail nearby, and although the dog seemed friendly, Clover puffed up instantly, pressing herself into the corner of the carrier. Emily whispered reassuringly, "Shh, you're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you." She gently draped a light scarf over part of the carrier to block some of the sights, giving Clover a bit of privacy. The receptionist smiled warmly. "First visit." Emily nodded. "Yes, she's about 12 weeks old. This is Clover." "Well," the receptionist said kindly, "she's in very good hands. Dr. Peterson is wonderful with kittens." Meeting the veterinarian. When Clover's name was called, Emily lifted the carrier and followed a veterinary assistant into an exam room. It was quiet and clean, with a tall counter covered in shiny instruments. Clover peeked out, her body tense. Dr. Peterson, a gentle-eyed woman with a calm voice, entered the room with a warm smile. "And who do we have here?" she asked softly, crouching down to Clover's eye level. Emily unzipped the carrier slowly, letting Clover peek out. The kitten hesitated but then stepped onto the counter, her paws making no sound against the cool surface. She looked small and uncertain under the bright exam light. Dr. Peterson extended her hand slowly, allowing Clover to sniff her fingers. "Hello, little one. You're a beauty, aren't you?" she murmured. Clover sniffed cautiously, then sat back, her tail curled tightly around her body. The examination. The exam began gently. Dr. Peterson checked Clover's eyes, ears, and teeth with soft, deliberate movements. Clover squirmed a little when her mouth was opened, but Emily's steady hand on her back calmed her. When the stethoscope touched her chest, Clover froze, her eyes wide, but the steady rhythm of her heartbeat reassured the doctor. "She's healthy," Dr. Peterson said with a smile. "Her heart and lungs sound perfect." Next came the vaccinations. Emily's heart clenched at the thought of Clover being frightened or in pain. She stroked Clover's fur and whispered soothing words as Dr. Peterson prepared the small syringe. "This will just be a tiny pinch," the doctor explained. "She'll be fine." Clover let out a surprised squeak when the needle touched her skin, but it was over in seconds. She blinked up at Emily, almost as if to say, "What just happened?" Emily kissed her head softly. "You're so brave, my love. I'm so proud of you." The hardest part. The moment that tested Clover the most was when the doctor checked her paws and clipped her nails. Clover squirmed and let out a tiny hiss of protest, her patience wearing thin. Emily held her gently but firmly, whispering encouragement all the while. Dr. Peterson chuckled softly. "She's feisty. That's a good sign of a healthy kitten." Finally, the exam ended, and Clover darted back into her carrier the instant Emily placed it nearby. She curled up tightly on her blanket, clearly relieved it was over. Heading home. On the ride back, Clover stayed quiet in her carrier, her eyes half closed. She seemed both tired and thoughtful, as though processing everything she had just experienced. Emily reached back and stroked her gently. "You did so well today," she whispered. "I know it was scary, but it was for your health. You're strong, Clover. Stronger than you know." By the time they reached home, Clover had relaxed enough to stretch inside her carrier. When Emily opened the door, Clover leapt out and headed straight for the couch, where she curled up with her tail over her nose. Within minutes, she was asleep, purring softly in the safety of her home. A lesson in trust. That night, as Clover slept soundly beside her, Emily reflected on the day. The vet visit had been more than just a checkup. It was a test of trust. Trust between pet and human, trust in kindness, and trust in the idea that sometimes love means doing things that aren't always easy. Emily looked down at Clover's tiny body rising and falling with each breath. "You're my brave little girl," she whispered. "And I promise I'll always be by your side, no matter what." Clover purred in her sleep, as if she understood. And so, the bond between them grew stronger, built not only on play and cuddles but also on the shared courage of facing the unknown, together. The summer days had grown warmer, and Clover had already settled into her routine. Long naps in sunbeams, playful chases after toy mice, and late-night cuddles with Emily on the couch. Life was peaceful and full of love. But Emily had been thinking about something new, something that could enrich Clover's world even more. Cats were independent creatures, but they also thrived with companionship. Emily often worried that Clover might get lonely during the hours when she was away at work or busy with her studies. The thought of Clover sitting by the window, staring out at the birds and squirrels alone, tugged at her heart. So one afternoon, Emily made a decision. It was time for Clover to meet another cat. The idea of a companion. Emily had a friend named Sarah, who lived just a few blocks away. Sarah had a calm, older cat named Oliver. He was 5 years old, wise in his movements, and carried himself with a quiet dignity. Unlike Clover's energetic and sometimes clumsy playfulness, Oliver was measured, patient, and confident. Sarah and Emily thought it might be good for Clover to meet Oliver, not as a permanent housemate just yet, but as a way to test how Clover might react to feline companionship. Emily spent days preparing. She read articles on proper introductions between cats, making sure the meeting would be safe and positive. She bought an extra scratching post, laid out additional bowls, and even purchased some new toys so neither cat would feel territorial. The first encounter. On the day of the meeting, Clover sensed that something unusual was about to happen. She watched intently as Emily cleaned the living room, set out treats, and placed a soft blanket on the floor. Her ears twitched with curiosity, her tail flicking in rhythm. When Sarah arrived with Oliver in his carrier, Clover immediately stiffened. Her golden eyes widened, and she crouched low to the ground, sniffing the unfamiliar scent that filled the air. Oliver, in contrast, remained calm. He sat upright in his carrier, gazing around with a slow blink that seemed to say, "I've seen it all before." Emily crouched beside Clover. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "This is Oliver. He's going to be your friend." Sarah carefully opened Oliver's carrier, allowing him to step out at his own pace. Oliver stretched gracefully, his long tail curling behind him, and then walked a slow circle around the room. Clover stayed in her corner, her ears tilted back, unsure of this new visitor. Curiosity versus caution. For the first several minutes, Clover didn't move. She simply watched Oliver, her eyes following every step he took. When he sniffed at her scratching post, Clover let out a small hiss, warning him to stay back. Oliver, unbothered, simply turned his head and gave her a long, calm blink, a feline sign of peace. Then he lay down on the rug, stretched out, and began grooming himself, as though Clover's protests didn't scare him in the slightest. Emily and Sarah exchanged a smile. "He's giving her space," Sarah whispered. Emily nodded. "She just needs time." Slowly, Clover's curiosity began to outweigh her fear. She crept forward a few inches, her body low to the ground. Oliver paused his grooming and glanced at her, then deliberately looked away, signaling that he meant no harm. That small gesture seemed to give Clover courage. She stepped closer, her nose twitching as she picked up Oliver's scent. The first touch. The moment finally came when Clover was close enough to touch Oliver's tail. She reached out one tentative paw and batted at it, her claws sheathed. Oliver turned his head and gave her a patient look, then flicked his tail again, almost inviting her to play. Clover batted it once more, then darted backward, her fur puffing slightly in excitement. Emily laughed softly. "I think that's her way of saying hello." Sarah smiled. "Oliver's being so patient. He's a good teacher." Encouraged by his calmness, Clover returned, this time sniffing at Oliver's side. Oliver tolerated the inspection for a few moments before standing up and moving to another spot in the room. To Clover, it felt like a game of chase, and she bounded after him with enthusiasm. Playtime together. What began as cautious observation slowly turned into playful interaction. Clover pounced, Oliver sidestepped. Clover darted behind the couch, Oliver followed with slow, deliberate steps. It wasn't quite a full game of chase, but it was the beginning of something special, a rhythm between two very different personalities. When Emily brought out a feather wand toy, Clover immediately leapt for it, her paws swiping wildly through the air. Oliver watched at first, his calm demeanor unshaken, but eventually his paw joined in, batting the feather with precision. For the first time, Clover wasn't playing alone. She was sharing her favorite activity with another cat, and the joy on her face was unmistakable. A shared moment. After nearly an hour of play and exploration, both cats grew tired. Oliver settled into the soft blanket Emily had laid out, curling into a neat loaf. Clover hesitated, unsure if she was allowed to join him. She circled once, then lay down nearby, not touching, but close enough that Emily could see the trust forming. Within minutes, Clover's eyes began to close, her small body rising and falling with steady breaths. Oliver, too, dozed peacefully, his tail twitching occasionally in a dream. Emily's heart swelled. She leaned towards Sarah and whispered, "I think she likes him." Sarah smiled warmly. "And I think he likes her, too. She just needs another cat to learn from. Oliver can teach her confidence." Heading home. When it was time for Sarah and Oliver to leave, Clover perked up, following Oliver to the door as if she didn't want him to go. She let out a soft meow, a sound Emily hadn't heard before, half question, half plea. Oliver gave one final slow blink before stepping back into his carrier. Clover stood at the door long after they had left, her tail swishing with a mix of confusion and longing. Emily crouched beside her. "Don't worry, Clover. You'll see Oliver again. And maybe one day, you'll have a brother or sister to live with you here." Clover rubbed against Emily's leg, purring softly, as though she understood. A lesson in friendship. That night, Clover curled up on the bed beside Emily, her head resting against Emily's arm. Though she was still the same playful, curious kitten, something inside her had changed. She had discovered that the world wasn't just Emily and herself. There were others, other cats, who could be friends, teachers, and companions. Emily kissed the top of her head. "You're growing, Clover. Every day, you're learning something new." Clover purred, her body warm and content. And somewhere deep inside her tiny heart, she knew she had taken her first step toward building a circle of friendship, a bond that would one day make her world even richer. The sun had slipped beyond the horizon, leaving behind a soft trail of pink and orange across the sky. The day was ending, and the neighborhood was slowly becoming quiet. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long beams of pale yellow against the pavement. Inside the cozy little home, Clover was restless. She paced back and forth along the windowsill, her tail twitching with anticipation. The night called to her in a way that daytime never did. There was something mysterious about the shadows, something enchanting about the cool breeze that whispered through the trees. Emily noticed Clover's behavior. "You're curious about the night, aren't you, sweetheart?" she said with a gentle smile. Emily had always been protective, making sure Clover was safe indoors. But she also knew that every kitten carried a spirit of adventure. Perhaps it was time to let Clover experience the world outside at night, under careful supervision, of course. Preparing for the night, Emily gathered her things. She slipped a small reflective collar around Clover's neck, one that jingled softly with each movement. She clipped on a lightweight harness and leash, ensuring Clover would stay safe. At first, Clover squirmed, not entirely fond of the harness. She pawed at it, wriggled, and even flopped onto the rug dramatically as if to say, "Why this strange contraption?" Emily chuckled softly. "Oh, you'll thank me later," she said, giving Clover a reassuring scratch behind the ears. Once everything was ready, Emily opened the front door. The cool evening air rushed in, carrying with it scents Clover had never noticed before. Her nose twitched wildly as she inhaled the crisp aroma of damp grass, distant barbecues, and the faint perfume of blooming night flowers. With wide golden eyes, Clover stepped outside. The world after dark. The neighborhood, so familiar during the day, seemed entirely different at night. Shadows stretched like long fingers across the ground. The trees whispered secrets in the wind. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked, its voice echoing in the stillness. Clover froze for a moment, her tiny body crouched low. Every sound felt sharper, every movement in the dark more mysterious. Emily knelt beside her. "It's okay, Clover. I'm right here." Encouraged by Emily's presence, Clover crept forward, placing one paw carefully in front of the other. She sniffed at the grass, where a snail glistened under the streetlight. A moth fluttered past her nose, and she leapt into the air to catch it, landing with a soft thud that made Emily laugh. To Clover, the night was alive. The world wasn't asleep, it was simply different, filled with creatures and sounds that the daytime never showed. The meeting with shadows. As they walked slowly down the quiet sidewalk, Clover's ears flicked toward a rustling in the bushes. She stiffened, her tail puffing slightly. A pair of glowing eyes blinked back at her. Emily tightened her grip on the leash, ready to protect Clover. But out of the bushes stepped a neighborhood stray, a tabby cat with torn ears and a rough coat. The stray eyed Clover curiously, his movements calm but cautious. Clover, though startled, didn't hiss. Instead, she tilted her head, her whiskers trembling as she sniffed the stranger from a safe distance. The stray gave a slow blink, then turned and padded away, disappearing into the shadows as silently as he had appeared. Emily exhaled in relief. That's the night, Clover. Full of surprises. Some are friendly, some are just passing through. Clover lingered for a moment, staring into the darkness where the stray had gone, as though storing the memory of her first mysterious encounter. Night sounds and moonlight. They continued their walk. Above them, the moon glowed silver, casting a gentle light across the quiet street. Clover stopped to watch a group of fireflies flickering like tiny stars in the bushes. She pawed at the air, utterly mesmerized by the glowing insects that danced just out of reach. Crickets chirped in chorus, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Each sound pulled Clover's attention in a new direction. She crouched low, ears twitching, tail swaying, as though she were a tiny huntress discovering the secrets of the night. Emily watched with quiet admiration. This was her kitten, learning to face the unknown. A small scare. As they rounded the corner, a sudden noise shattered the stillness. A trash can lid clattered to the ground as a raccoon scrambled away, its eyes glowing briefly in the dark. Clover bolted backward, her fur puffing up in alarm. She let out a startled meow, pressing herself against Emily's legs. Emily knelt, stroking her gently. Shoo, it's all right. Just a raccoon. He's more scared of you than you are of him. Clover's heart raced, but Emily's calm voice soothed her. Within moments, her fur settled, and she cautiously sniffed the air where the raccoon had been. It was a valuable lesson. The night wasn't only beautiful, it was unpredictable, too. The first step of confidence. As the walk continued, Clover's steps grew bolder. She began to trot ahead, tugging lightly at the leash, eager to see more. The shadows no longer frightened her, they intrigued her. When a breeze rustled through the trees, she tilted her head and chased after a drifting leaf. When a distant siren wailed, she paused only briefly before resuming her exploration. Every step was a discovery, every sound a story. Returning home. After nearly an hour outside, Emily decided it was time to return. She gently guided Clover back toward the house. As they approached the front door, Clover paused, looking back at the moonlit street. She sat for a moment, her golden eyes reflecting the silver glow of the night. It was as if she was saying, "I'll be back. There's so much more to see." Inside, Clover curled up on the windowsill, still buzzing with the energy of her adventure. She licked her paws thoughtfully, her ears twitching at the faint sound still drifting in from outside. Emily watched her with a smile. "You were so brave tonight, Clover. I'm proud of you." Clover purred softly, her tiny chest vibrating with warmth. Though she was tired, her heart felt wide awake, open to the mysteries of the night. A kitten growing up. That night, as Clover drifted into sleep, her dreams were filled with fireflies, glowing eyes in the dark, and the sound of crickets under the moonlight. She had taken her first step into the unknown, guided by trust and courage. And Emily, watching over her, knew that this was only the beginning. Clover was not just growing stronger, she was becoming wiser, braver, and more connected to the world around her. The night had given Clover a gift, the courage to face shadows and the wonder to see beauty in them. The morning sun peeked through the curtains, filling Emily's small house with golden light. Clover stretched on her blanket, yawning widely, her tiny pink tongue curling in the air. It was just another morning to her, or so she thought. Emily had something special planned. Today would be Clover's very first car ride. No more staying only inside the neighborhood. No more watching the world through a window. Today, Clover was going to see a much bigger part of life, the outside world beyond her safe, familiar home. The carrier. Emily set a small pet carrier on the floor. It was soft-sided, with mesh windows that let air and light pass through. Inside, she placed a cozy blanket that carried Clover's scent, along with one of her favorite toys, a little stuffed mouse. When Clover saw the carrier, she tilted her head curiously. She sniffed around it, poked a paw inside, and then quickly backed away. To Clover, it was new, strange, and slightly suspicious. Emily crouched beside her. "Don't worry, Clover. This is just your little travel box. You'll be safe inside." She gently lifted the kitten and placed her inside the carrier. At first, Clover meowed in protest, scratching softly at the mesh. But when she realized she could still see Emily and smell her familiar blanket, she settled down with a quiet purr. The car ride begins. Emily carried Clover carefully to the car and set the carrier on the back seat. She buckled the carrier in with the seatbelt, making sure it wouldn't slide around. Safety first. The moment the car engine started, Clover's ears twitched. Her golden eyes grew wide, and she let out a confused little chirp. The low hum of the engine vibrated through the carrier, making her tiny body shiver. Emily glanced back at her. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's just the car. You're safe." As the car pulled out of the driveway, Clover pressed her nose to the mesh window. Her world began to move, trees, houses, and lampposts sliding past like a never-ending parade. She had never seen things move so fast before. It was overwhelming, but also fascinating. At first, she crouched low, unsure of the strange rumbling beneath her paws. But as the ride continued, her curiosity grew stronger than her fear. She rose slowly, balancing on shaky legs, and stared out the window with wide-eyed wonder. Sights and sounds of the road. The car rolled along the busy street. Clover's ears flicked in every direction. She could hear the honking of horns, the roar of passing motorcycles, and the rhythmic clicking of the turn signals. Each sound startled her at first, but Emily's calm voice from the driver's seat kept her grounded. "See all that, Clover? That's the world out there. So many places to explore." Cars zoomed past, their wheels splashing puddles left from last night's rain. Clover's nose twitched as she caught faint scents of gasoline, asphalt, and food drifting from a passing food truck. When the car stopped at a red light, Clover tilted her head, watching a man on a bicycle pedal by. She pawed at the mesh, as if she wanted to chase after him. Then a dog in another car barked, startling her. She jumped back, her fur puffing slightly, but quickly relaxed when she realized she was safe inside her carrier. The park arrival. After a while, the car slowed down and turned into a quiet parking lot. Emily shut off the engine and unbuckled Clover's carrier. "We're here, Clover. Your very first trip to the park." Clover perked up instantly. She could smell grass, earth, and flowers even from inside the car. Her tail swished eagerly. Emily carried the carrier to a grassy area, far from the busy road. She set it down gently and unzipped the mesh door. Clover hesitated for a moment. The bright world stretched before her, open space, towering trees, chirping birds. Then, with cautious steps, she padded out onto the soft grass. Her paws sank slightly into the earth, and she froze, sniffing the air deeply. Discovering the park. The park was alive with sounds and movement. Birds fluttered overhead, chirping loudly from tree branches. Children laughed in the distance, their kites soaring against the blue sky. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and fresh-cut grass. Clover crouched low at first, her instincts telling her to stay hidden. But curiosity soon won. She crept forward, her nose brushing the grass, discovering new smells with every step. A butterfly floated past, its wings shimmering in the sunlight. Clover immediately pounced, tumbling clumsily in the grass as the butterfly drifted just out of reach. Emily laughed warmly. "That's my playful girl." Nearby, a squirrel darted across the ground. Clover froze, her eyes locked on the small creature. Her tail swished as though preparing for a chase. But the squirrel scurried up a tree before she could even take a step. Clover sat down, looking up at the tree with a mix of awe and frustration. A new friend. As Emily guided Clover along the park path with her harness and leash, they encountered another pet, a small, friendly dog. The dog wagged its tail eagerly, pulling toward Clover with excitement. Clover stiffened, her fur puffing slightly. She let out a tiny hiss, unsure of this new creature. The dog barked once, but it was more of a playful greeting than a threat. Emily knelt beside Clover, stroking her fur. "It's okay. He's just saying hello." After a few tense moments, Clover calmed down. She sniffed cautiously at the dog's nose, then quickly retreated behind Emily's leg. It wasn't quite friendship yet, but it was the beginning of learning that the world held many different creatures, not all of them scary. Resting in the shade. After exploring for a while, Emily sat on a bench beneath a large oak tree. She placed Clover on her lap, letting the kitten watch the world from the safety of her arms. Clover's eyes followed the movement of joggers, children with balloons, and families enjoying picnics. She purred softly, comforted by Emily's steady heartbeat and warm embrace. For the first time, Clover realized that the world outside her little home was vast, bigger than she had ever imagined. It was noisy, unpredictable, and sometimes overwhelming. But it was also beautiful, full of things to see, smell, and learn. Heading home. Eventually, it was time to return. Emily placed Clover gently back inside the carrier and carried her to the car. This time, Clover didn't meow in protest. She settled down quickly, curling into her blanket, tired from the excitement of her adventure. As the car rolled back toward home, Clover's eyes grew heavy. She peeked once more through the mesh window, watching the world rush past, and then closed her eyes with a soft sigh. When they arrived home, Emily opened the carrier. Clover padded out slowly, stretching her tiny body before flopping onto the rug. She looked up at Emily with sleepy eyes, as if to say, "That was amazing. When can we go again?" Emily stroked her gently. "Soon, Clover. Very soon. A kitten's growing world." That night, as Clover curled into her bed, she dreamed of butterflies, wide-open skies, and trees full of squirrels. She had seen the world outside her street for the very first time, and though it was big and sometimes intimidating, she had faced it with courage. Her journey was just beginning. With Emily by her side, every trip, every discovery, and every adventure would help Clover grow into the confident, curious cat she was meant to be. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, spilling warm light across Clover's little bed. Today was not a play day, nor a day for chasing butterflies. Today was a day of responsibility, a day that would help Clover stay healthy and strong. Emily had been planning this for weeks. Clover's vaccinations were due, and it was time for her first full veterinary checkup. Clover, blissfully unaware of the importance of this day, purred softly as she stretched and rolled onto her side. Preparing for the trip, Emily set out the familiar carrier, placing Clover's favorite blanket inside. She added a small toy mouse, hoping to make the experience less stressful. Clover sniffed the carrier, circled it once, and then tapped it lightly with her paw. There was a flicker of hesitation in her golden eyes. Emily crouched down beside her. "Don't worry, Clover. It's just a checkup. You'll be safe the whole time." Clover blinked slowly, her whiskers twitching. Emily could almost hear the kitten thinking, "I hope so." With gentle hands, Emily lifted Clover into the carrier. She zipped it closed and whispered soothingly, "You're so brave, my little girl." Clover purred, though the sound was small and hesitant. The car ride. As Emily carried the carrier to the car, Clover's ears twitched nervously. She had experienced a car ride before, but this felt different. Her tiny body vibrated with uncertainty. The engine started, and the car hummed to life. Clover pressed herself against the soft blanket, eyes wide, tail twitching. Emily reached back to gently stroke her fur. "It's okay, Clover. We'll be there soon." The neighborhood rolled past like a living painting. Trees, houses, and passing cars blurred together. Clover tilted her head, sniffing the moving air, her mind a swirl of curiosity and apprehension. At first, she crouched low, clinging to the blanket. But as the ride continued, she began to peek out of the mesh window, her golden eyes reflecting the passing sunlight. Arriving at the clinic. The veterinary clinic was busy but welcoming. Dogs barked softly in the waiting room, cats meowed from their carriers, and the receptionist moved with calm efficiency. Clover's ears twitched at every sound, her body tense with uncertainty. Emily placed the carrier on a chair and whispered, "It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you." Clover pressed herself into the corner, eyes wide as she observed the new environment. The receptionist smiled warmly. "First visit." Emily nodded. "Yes, she's 12 weeks old. This is Clover." Meeting the veterinarian. Dr. Peterson entered the room with a calm smile. Her presence was reassuring, and her gentle voice immediately put Emily at ease. "And who do we have here?" she asked softly, crouching down to Clover's level. Emily unzipped the carrier slightly, allowing Clover to peek out. The kitten's eyes were wide, her body tense but curious. Dr. Peterson extended her hand slowly. "Hello, little one. Let's take a look at you, shall we?" Clover sniffed cautiously, then withdrew slightly. Emily stroked her back gently. "You're safe. Just a quick checkup, that's all." The examination. The examination began with a careful check of Clover's eyes, ears, and mouth. She squirmed slightly when her mouth was examined, but Emily's gentle reassurance kept her calm. When the stethoscope touched her chest, Clover froze, but the rhythmic sound of her own heartbeat seemed to reassure her. Dr. Peterson smiled. Perfectly healthy heart and lungs. Next came the vaccinations. Clover's small body tensed at the sight of the tiny syringe. Emily stroked her head softly. "It'll just be a little pinch, baby. You're so brave." Clover let out a tiny squeak as the injection was given, then blinked up at Emily, as if asking, "Was that all?" Emily hugged her softly. "See, you did wonderfully." Nail clipping and pause. The final step was the nail trimming. Clover was initially startled, flinching as the veterinarian gently held her paws. But Emily's calm presence and constant soft words helped Clover relax. "Feisty little one," Dr. Peterson chuckled. That's a sign of a healthy, energetic kitten. Clover's tiny paws were soon neat and trimmed, her small body settling back into Emily's arms with a soft purr. Heading home. After the visit, Emily placed Clover back into her carrier. She seemed more relaxed now, aware that the experience, though strange, had not been frightening. During the car ride home, Clover pressed against the blanket, purring quietly. Emily smiled, reaching back to gently stroke her fur. "I'm proud of you, Clover. You faced everything so bravely." When they arrived home, Clover padded out of the carrier, stretching and sniffing every familiar corner of the house. She curled up on her favorite blanket, exhausted but content. Lessons in trust. The first vet visit had been more than a medical necessity. It was a lesson in trust. Trust in Emily, trust in kindness, and trust in herself. Clover had faced her fears, learned to stay calm in an unfamiliar environment, and discovered that even strange experiences could end safely with love and care. Emily sat beside her kitten, brushing a soft hand over her golden fur. "You're my brave little girl," she whispered. Clover purred in response, her small body vibrating with comfort and contentment. The bond between them had grown even stronger. Through each adventure, each challenge, and each tiny victory, Clover and Emily learned together, forming a relationship built on love, trust, and courage. The growing confidence. That evening, Clover explored her home with newfound confidence. She chased her toys, leaped onto windowsills, and even dared to explore the corners of rooms she had previously avoided. The first vet visit had changed her. It had shown her that the world, though sometimes strange or scary, could be faced with courage, especially with Emily by her side. And as she curled up for the night, her eyes slowly closing, Clover dreamed of playful adventures, sunny days, and the love of her human, knowing that no matter what, she was safe, cherished, and strong. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, filling the cozy little home with warmth. Clover stretched luxuriously on her blanket, her paws reaching high above her head. The previous days had been full of adventure, first car rides, visits to the park, and a vet checkup, but today seemed peaceful. At least, that's what Emily thought. Clover, as always, had her own plans. Curiosity strikes. The living room was quiet, littered with toys and blankets. Clover's golden eyes darted toward a stack of small boxes on the low table. She sniffed at them cautiously, tail flicking with interest. There was something about the way the boxes were stacked that seemed irresistible to a curious little kitten. Clover crouched low and crept toward the table. She batted at the bottom box with a tiny paw, then nudged it with her nose. The boxes wobbled slightly, but Clover was confident in her balance. She pawed again. Emily, sitting nearby with her laptop, noticed the movement out of the corner of her eye. "Clover, careful," she called softly. But the kitten was already too engrossed in her little exploration. The accident. With one daring leap, Clover attempted to scale the table. Her claws caught briefly on the edge, but her small body lost balance. The stack of boxes tumbled over, one hitting the floor with a soft thud, another brushing Clover's back. Startled, Clover yelped, a sound that made Emily's heart skip a beat. The kitten skidded across the rug, tiny paws scrambling for traction. Emily rushed over, kneeling quickly. "Oh, sweetheart, are you okay?" Clover froze for a moment, wide-eyed and tense, then scampered behind the couch, peeking out cautiously. Her tail puffed slightly, a sign of both fright and embarrassment. Comfort and reassurance. Emily carefully approached, speaking in a soft, soothing voice. "It's okay, Clover. You're safe. I'm right here." Slowly, Clover crept out from behind the couch, her ears tilted slightly back. Emily reached down and gently stroked her fur, checking for any scratches or injuries. Clover purred softly, reassured by the familiar touch. "That's my brave girl," Emily whispered. "You had a little tumble, but you're fine." Clover rubbed against Emily's hand, her purr growing louder. She realized that while accidents might be scary, Emily was always there to help her through them. Learning from mistakes. After the initial shock, Clover's curiosity returned, but this time, a bit more cautiously. She approached the toppled boxes again, sniffing them, pawing lightly, but avoiding climbing. Emily watched with a smile. "This is good," she said softly. "You're learning to be careful." Clover tilted her head, as if understanding the words. She pawed gently at a box, then jumped back onto the rug safely, satisfied with her exploration. It was a small lesson in balance, caution, and understanding her limits, turning curiosity into play. Once the boxes were back in order, Emily brought out Clover's favorite toys, a little stuffed mouse, a feather wand, and a softball. Clover's eyes lit up immediately. The previous accident was forgotten, replaced by excitement and playful energy. She chased the feather wand, leaping into the air with graceful swipes. She batted the mouse across the rug, then pounced on it, rolling and tumbling in pure kitten joy. Emily laughed, watching her playful little companion. "You're full of energy today, aren't you?" Clover responded with a playful pounce toward Emily's hand, gently biting the feather wand. Her little accidents didn't dampen her spirit. Instead, they seemed to make her more determined to explore and play safely. Small adventures within the home. Throughout the day, Clover continued her indoor adventures. She discovered a small gap behind the bookshelf, sniffing and exploring carefully. She chased sunbeams across the floor, pawing at the shifting light with intense concentration. Emily followed her gently, making sure the little kitten stayed safe. She encouraged Clover to climb only where it was secure, and praised her whenever she made careful jumps or avoided risky spots. Clover was learning that exploration could be fun and safe at the same time. Afternoon nap. After hours of play, Clover grew tired. She stretched luxuriously, curling into a soft ball on her blanket. Emily watched as her tiny chest rose and fell with steady breaths. "You've had quite a day, little girl," Emily whispered, stroking Clover's fur. "Exploring, learning, and playing, all while being safe." Clover purred contentedly, the small accident from the morning already forgotten. She had discovered that the world was full of exciting things, and that even when mistakes happened, Emily's love and guidance would keep her safe. Building trust and confidence. This little accident was more than just a mishap. It was a lesson in resilience, trust, and learning. Clover realized that even when things went wrong, she could rely on Emily. She learned to approach new challenges with caution, to explore safely, and to trust the guidance of someone who cared deeply for her. Emily, in turn, understood the importance of gentle supervision, patience, and encouragement. Every tumble, every misstep, was a chance to teach Clover valuable life skills. By the end of the day, Clover had grown not only physically stronger, but also emotionally wiser. She had learned a little more about boundaries, safety, and the joy of discovery. Evening calm. As the sun set, casting golden and pink hues across the walls, Clover nestled into Emily's lap. She purred softly, her tiny body relaxed and warm. Emily kissed the top of her head. "You're such a brave little girl, Clover. I'm proud of you every single day." Clover blinked slowly, her eyes half closed in contentment. The accidents, the lessons, the play, they were all part of her growing up. And she knew, deep in her heart, that with Emily by her side, every day would be filled with love, safety, and adventure. The morning sun poured softly through the windows, lighting up every corner of Emily's cozy home. Clover stretched lazily on her blanket, her golden eyes half closed, yet flicking with anticipation. Today was not just any ordinary day, it was Clover's very first playdate. Emily had been planning it carefully. After Clover's previous meetings with Oliver, Emily thought it would be perfect for Clover to spend some more time socializing with another feline friend. Social interaction was important for kittens, helping them learn boundaries, develop confidence, and simply have fun. Preparing for the visit, Emily set up the living room for the playdate. Soft rugs were laid out for jumping and rolling, toys scattered around for pouncing practice, and a few comfortable blankets placed strategically for resting spots. She wanted the space to be fun but safe, allowing the kittens to explore freely without fear. Soon, the doorbell rang. Emily opened the door to find Oliver, Clover's older feline companion, accompanied by Sarah, who carried him gently in his familiar soft carrier. Clover's ears perked up at the sound, her tail swishing excitedly. "Clover! Look who's here!" Emily exclaimed. Clover's eyes widened as she watched the other cat being set down gently on the rug. The first introduction. Clover approached cautiously, sniffing the air. Oliver, calm and confident as ever, gave her a slow blink, signaling peace. Clover's golden eyes softened, and after a tentative step forward, she extended a tiny paw to tap Oliver's paw gently. Oliver responded with another slow blink and a gentle nudge with his head. It was an unspoken agreement. This was a friendly interaction. Clover's tail flicked once, twice, then she pounced lightly toward a nearby toy mouse, signaling the start of their first real play session. Playtime begins. The two cats began circling each other, assessing and testing boundaries. Clover, full of kitten energy, darted around the room, leaping after Oliver, who moved with graceful precision. Oliver allowed her antics, occasionally swatting gently with his paw, teaching Clover about limits and manners in a kind, patient way. Clover's eyes sparkled with joy. She chased feather wands, pounced on rolling balls, and leaped over cushions with reckless enthusiasm. Oliver occasionally joined in, stalking her movements and then suddenly darting past her in a playful mock attack. Emily and Sarah watched in amusement. "She's learning so much from him," Sarah said with a smile. Emily nodded. Yes, and she's having so much fun. Look at her confidence grow. Lessons in sharing and patience. At one point, Clover grabbed a small toy and ran to a corner, clearly claiming it as her own. Oliver approached slowly, sniffing the toy. Clover hissed softly, not aggressive, but protective. Emily knelt beside her. It's okay, Clover. You can share. He won't take it away. See? Clover hesitated, sniffing Oliver cautiously. After a few moments, she dropped the toy, letting him nudge it gently with his paw. Her ears relaxed, tail unpuffed. It was a small but important lesson in sharing, patience, and trust in friendships. Exploring together. After several minutes of playful chasing and gentle swats, the kittens moved to explore the room together. They climbed on the couch, sniffed the blankets, and investigated each nook and cranny. Clover occasionally brushed against Oliver's side, learning comfort in companionship. Emily observed closely, noting how the kittens communicated. Subtle tail flicks, slow blinks, and soft paw taps, all signs of developing social skills. Clover was learning more than play. She was learning how to interact, negotiate boundaries, and enjoy the presence of another feline friend. A moment of rest. Play can be tiring, even for energetic kittens. After nearly half an hour, Clover flopped onto a blanket, purring, while Oliver lay nearby, grooming himself. They rested close enough to feel each other's presence without crowding, a sign of trust and comfort. Emily knelt beside Clover, stroking her fur. You're learning so much today, little one, she whispered. Clover purred in response, golden eyes bright but half closed in contentment. Sarah smiled. Oliver seems to enjoy her company too. He's very patient with her energy. Emily nodded. It's wonderful to see. She's building confidence, learning social skills, and having so much fun. Another round of play. Refreshed after the short rest, the kittens resumed their play. Feather wands, softballs, and interactive toys brought out bursts of energy. Clover leapt over Oliver, ran in zigzag patterns, and even attempted to ambush him from behind a cushion. Oliver, ever patient, allowed her antics while occasionally teaching her through gentle swats or a slow retreat. Clover was learning through action, how to approach, how to retreat, and how to enjoy interaction without fear. Emily laughed softly, clapping her hands when Clover made a particularly daring leap. Good girl. You're so brave. Clover responded with a joyful squeak and a chase around the room, spinning and rolling in pure kitten happiness. End of the playdate. As the afternoon sun began to lower, Emily knew it was time to conclude the playdate. She gently picked up Clover and placed her on a soft blanket, allowing her to rest. Oliver was returned to his carrier, giving the kittens a moment to calm down. Clover's golden eyes followed Oliver as he left, a hint of longing and understanding that she had made a new friend. She purred softly, curling into Emily's lap, exhausted but happy. Emily stroked her fur, smiling. You did so well today, Clover. You made a friend, learned some lessons, and had so much fun. I'm proud of you. Growing through friendship. The first playdate had been more than just fun. It was an essential step in Clover's growth. Through play, she learned about boundaries, patience, sharing, and social interaction. She experienced the joy of friendship and discovered that the world was richer and more exciting when shared with others. As Clover drifted into a nap, golden eyes closing slowly, Emily watched her with a gentle smile. Her little kitten was growing every day, stronger, wiser, braver, and more confident. The adventures would continue, and so would the lessons. But today, Clover had discovered one of the greatest joys of all, friendship. The world outside was quiet and still, blanketed in a soft, white coat. Tiny flakes drifted from the sky, falling gently onto the ground, onto the trees, and onto the rooftops. The season had changed, and winter had arrived. For Clover, this was a brand new experience, one that would fill her tiny golden eyes with wonder. Inside, Clover stretched and yawned on her blanket, peering out the window at the delicate snowflakes falling. Her ears twitched with excitement, and her little paws tapped against the windowsill as if urging Emily to let her experience this strange, magical world. Preparing for the adventure. Emily noticed Clover's interest and smiled warmly. Do you want to see the snow, little one? She asked. Clover responded with a tiny chirp, tail flicking excitedly. She prepared a small winter harness and leash, adding a soft scarf around Clover's neck. The scarf was more for warmth than style, and Clover tolerated it with a little wiggle of her body. Emily then picked up the small carrier, placing Clover inside gently. The car ride to the nearby park was short, but Clover's eyes widened as the snowy landscape came into view. Snow covered the sidewalks, tree branches sparkled with frost, and the world looked entirely different from the green parks and sunny streets she had seen before. First steps on snow. Emily carefully unzipped the carrier and let Clover step onto the fresh, cold snow. At first, Clover's paws sank slightly, and she froze in surprise. The sensation was completely new, cold, soft, and slightly slippery. Emily knelt beside her. "It's okay, Clover. The snow won't hurt you. You're safe." Clover sniffed the white ground cautiously, her nose twitching at the unfamiliar scents carried by the crisp winter air. She lifted one paw, then another, before cautiously taking a tiny step forward. Her movements were slow and tentative, but her curiosity pushed her onward. Discovering snow. Clover soon realized that snow could be fun. She batted at the falling flakes, pawing at them as they landed on her fur. Each tiny flake was a surprise, melting slightly as it touched her warm body. She crouched, pounced, and then rolled carefully in the soft snow, leaving tiny paw prints behind her. Emily watched, laughing softly. "You're discovering a whole new world, Clover." Clover tilted her head, her golden eyes sparkling with wonder. She darted around the park, chasing flakes drifting from the trees, and occasionally stopping to sniff the fresh, cold ground. The snow was strange and thrilling, a playground unlike any she had ever known. Meeting new winter friends. As they explored, Clover noticed other animals braving the snow. A curious squirrel darted across a snowy branch, leaving tiny footprints behind. Birds hopped along the ground, pecking at scattered seeds. Clover crouched, tail flicking with excitement. She attempted a playful pounce toward the squirrel, but it was too fast. Still, the chase was thrilling, and Clover's playful leaps and soft landings in the snow delighted Emily. A few dogs passed by on leashes, their owners greeting Emily with friendly smiles. Clover observed carefully, learning again how to approach new situations. Cautious, curious, yet excited to explore. Slipping, sliding, and laughing. The snow wasn't always easy to navigate. Clover's tiny paws occasionally slipped, sending her sliding a few inches along the icy patches. Each time, she would squeak in surprise, then quickly regain her balance, determined to continue her exploration. Emily reached down to offer encouragement. "You're doing so well, Clover. Look at you go." Clover chirped back, pouncing into a small drift of snow, rolling and tumbling joyfully. Her movements were a mix of caution and bold curiosity, perfectly embodying the spirit of a young kitten discovering a brand new world. The joy of snow play. Soon, Clover became more confident, bounding through the snow with energy and delight. She chased snowflakes in the air, pawing at them and attempting to catch them mid-fall. She rolled in the soft drifts, leaving a trail of paw prints and small indentations as she explored every corner of the winter park. Emily laughed warmly, kneeling to take a few pictures. "You're a natural, little one. Snow is your new playground." Clover's tiny meows of excitement filled the crisp air, her golden eyes wide and sparkling, her tail swishing in delight. She discovered that snow wasn't scary. It was a fun, magical part of the world to explore. A rest in the winter sun. After nearly an hour of snowy adventures, Emily guided Clover to a small bench under a bare tree. She lifted her onto her lap, brushing away any clinging snowflakes from her fur. Clover curled into a warm ball, her fur slightly damp but still glowing with health and excitement. Her eyes half closed in contentment as she purred softly, the cold air invigorating yet soothing. Emily stroked her gently. "You were so brave today, Clover. Your first snow, and you faced it with curiosity and courage." Clover responded with a soft chirp and a tiny nuzzle against Emily's hand, signaling trust and affection. Heading home. The walk back to the car was slower, Clover occasionally pausing to sniff the sparkling snow one last time. She left tiny paw prints behind her, small marks of her first winter adventure. Back in the car, she curled up on her favorite blanket, tired but happy. Emily smiled as she drove home. "We'll have many more snowy days, Clover. And each one will be even more fun." Clover purred softly, her eyes closing, dreaming of white fields, falling snowflakes, and the thrill of discovery. Learning and growing. This first snowfall was more than just a new experience. It was a lesson in courage, curiosity, and resilience. Clover learned that the world could be strange and beautiful at the same time, that new adventures could bring joy and excitement, and that with Emily's love and support, she could explore anything with confidence. By the time they reached home, Clover was warm, cozy, and content. She curled into her blanket, her tiny body relaxed, and her heart full of the wonder of winter. The morning sun spilled golden light across the garden, illuminating every leaf, flower, and blade of grass. Clover's golden eyes sparkled with curiosity as she prowled the garden, sniffing the fresh scent of spring. The world seemed bigger today, filled with towering trees and tall bushes that whispered with a gentle breeze. Emily watched Clover closely from the patio, a cup of tea in her hands. She knew that Clover's adventurous spirit was calling her toward something new, a challenge she hadn't faced before. The towering tree. In the middle of the garden stood an old oak tree, its branches stretching toward the sky like welcoming arms. Clover's eyes followed the branches upward, ears twitching with interest. She had climbed smaller shrubs and furniture before, but this was different. It was higher, broader, and full of mystery. Clover crouched low, tail flicking, considering her options. Emily noticed the determination in her tiny face. "Are you thinking about climbing, little one?" she asked softly. Clover blinked slowly, as if acknowledging Emily's question. The first climb. Clover approached the tree cautiously, sniffing the bark and testing her grip with tiny paws. Her claws dug gently into the rough surface as she made her first tentative climb. She paused halfway up the trunk, chest rising and falling with excitement and slight nervousness. Emily knelt beneath the tree, speaking softly. "You're doing so well, Clover. Take your time. One step at a time." Clover's ears twitched at Emily's voice, her golden eyes scanning the branches above. She took another careful step, then another, until she reached a low branch, safe and sturdy. Her tiny claws clung firmly, and she balanced her small body with surprising skill. A new perspective. From the branch, Clover could see the garden in a completely new way. Flowers she had walked past now looked miniature, birds hopping along the ground appeared smaller, and the wind made the leaves dance in mesmerizing patterns. Clover froze for a moment, taking in the view. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from exhilaration. The world was vast, full of sights she had never noticed before, and she was seeing it from a new vantage point. Emily smiled, watching Clover's wonder. "Isn't it amazing, little one? Everything looks so different from up there." Clover chirped softly, as if agreeing, then crouched low to stabilize herself on the branch. She twitched her tail, ready to explore a little further. Exploring the branches. Slowly, Clover moved along the branch, testing each step carefully. The higher she climbed, the more she learned about balance, courage, and trust in her own body. Every tiny movement required focus, but the thrill of adventure kept her going. She pawed gently at a fluttering leaf, swatted at a drifting feather, and even crouched to watch a butterfly pass below. Each new discovery filled her with delight and taught her how to move confidently in an unfamiliar environment. Emily spoke softly from below. "Careful, Clover. You're doing wonderfully. Remember, you can always come down if you need to." Clover's eyes flicked down briefly, seeing Emily's reassuring smile. The trust between them gave her courage to continue exploring. A little challenge. At one point, Clover spotted a slightly thinner branch extending toward another part of the tree. She hesitated, balancing carefully on the sturdier limb. Her tail flicked with determination. Emily held her breath, speaking gently. "You can do it, Clover. Take it slowly." Clover inched forward, testing the branch's strength with her tiny paws. It held firm. She continued, step by step, until she reached the new branch, her golden eyes wide with pride. From here, she could see beyond the garden fence, catching glimpses of rooftops, neighboring trees, and even a distant park. The world felt endless, full of possibilities she had never imagined. Learning courage and patience. After a few minutes of exploration, Clover paused on the branch, tail swishing thoughtfully. She had learned that climbing required patience, careful steps, and trust in herself. Every movement was a lesson in courage, teaching her that even challenges that seemed scary at first could be conquered. Emily smiled and clapped softly. "I'm proud of you, Clover. You faced your fears and discovered something amazing." Clover purred softly, curling around the branch as she rested for a moment. Her chest rose and fell in calm, steady breaths, a sign of her growing confidence. Returning to safety. Eventually, it was time to descend. Clover tested each branch carefully, moving backward at first, then stepping down toward the trunk. Emily's voice encouraged her the whole way. "You're doing so well, little one. Almost there." Clover carefully climbed down, paw by paw, until she reached the soft grass below. She shook her tiny body, fur fluffed, and let out a triumphant little chirp. Emily scooped her up, hugging her close. "You did it, Clover. Your first tree climb and you saw the world from up high. I'm so proud of you." A newfound confidence. That afternoon, Clover explored the garden with renewed energy. She jumped onto low fences, explored taller shrubs, and even revisited the base of the oak tree with a confident flick of her tail. She had learned that courage, patience, and trust could open up entirely new worlds. Emily watched her closely, smiling. "Every adventure makes you braver, Clover. You're growing so fast, learning so much." Clover purred contentedly, rubbing against Emily's leg. Her heart was full of joy, excitement, and the thrill of discovery. Evening reflection. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden-orange shadows across the garden, Clover curled into her favorite blanket indoors. She purred softly, dreaming of branches, fluttering leaves, and the endless possibilities waiting in the world beyond. Emily stroked her fur gently. "You're my little adventurer. Today you climbed your first tree, saw the world from a new height, and learned that courage brings reward." Clover's golden eyes slowly closed, a contented purr vibrating from her tiny chest. Her world had grown bigger, brighter, and more exciting, and she knew that with Emily by her side, every day held the promise of a new adventure. The morning sun shimmered across the water as Emily carried Clover toward the nearby river. The gentle breeze carried the fresh scent of the water and the soft rustle of leaves. Clover's golden eyes were wide with curiosity, her tail flicking excitedly. Today was a new adventure, a chance to explore a world she had never experienced before, the river and its sparkling, moving water. Emily set down the blanket by the riverbank and carefully lifted Clover out of her carrier. The kitten's tiny paws touched the soft grass, and she crouched low, sniffing the fresh, earthy scent mixed with a hint of flowing water. First glimpses of the river. Clover's eyes widened as she peered at the water. It moved, shimmering in the sunlight, reflecting the sky above. Tiny ripples lapped gently against the shore, making soft, mesmerizing sounds. Emily crouched beside her. "It's okay, Clover. The water won't hurt you. You can watch it and explore slowly." Clover blinked slowly, golden eyes tracking the flowing water. Her tiny whiskers twitched as she leaned closer, pouring carefully at the wet edge. The sensation of cool water against her fur startled her slightly, but her curiosity won over her caution. Testing the waters. Clover gingerly dipped one paw into the shallow water. She pulled it back quickly, her paw dripping tiny droplets. Emily laughed softly. "It's just water, little one. See? Nothing scary here." Encouraged by Emily's calm voice, Clover reached out again, this time letting two paws touch the moving surface. She watched as the water rippled around them, fascinated by the way it moved and sparkled. Emily smiled, stroking her fur. "You're so brave, Clover. The water is your new friend." A little play by the shore. Soon, Clover began to explore along the riverbank. She pawed at small pebbles, sniffed tiny insects, and chased drifting leaves across the water's edge. Each new movement of the river seemed like a game, inviting her to interact. She crouched low, then leapt after a floating twig, swatting it gently with her paw. Emily clapped softly, encouraging her. "Good girl. You're learning how to explore safely." Clover chirped in excitement, her tail flicking, eyes bright. The river became a playground, a magical space for discovery and adventure. Meeting river friends. As Clover explored, she noticed creatures along the riverbank. A family of ducks paddled nearby, quacking softly. Clover crouched, observing them with wide eyes. She wanted to approach but stayed cautious, respecting their space. Emily whispered, "See? You can watch and learn. The world has so many friends, Clover." Clover's curiosity grew. She pawed at the water gently, creating small ripples that seemed to delight her. Every new sight, every sound, every movement taught her something about the world beyond her familiar home. A splash of courage. At one point, a small wave reached her paws. Clover yelped slightly, jumping back, but quickly realized it wasn't dangerous. She crouched again, peering at the moving water, then gently pawed at it. Emily smiled. "That's it, little one. See? You're learning courage and balance." Clover's confidence grew with every cautious step. She learned to approach new sensations slowly, to test her limits, and to trust her instincts, all while under Emily's watchful and reassuring presence. Running along the riverbank. Once Clover understood the water, she began to move more freely along the riverbank. She chased shadows, leaped over small rocks, and even rolled in the soft grass near the edge. Emily laughed softly, watching her adventurous kitten. "You're full of energy today, Clover," Emily said warmly. "The river seems to love you too." Clover responded with little excited squeaks and playful pounces, her fur glinting in the sunlight, golden eyes sparkling with delight. Discovering reflection. At one point, Clover noticed her reflection in the water. She crouched, tilting her head, fascinated by the small golden kitten looking back at her. She tapped the surface gently with her paw, creating ripples that distorted her own image. Emily chuckled softly. "Hello there, little explorer. That's you, Clover. Isn't it amazing?" Clover seemed intrigued, watching the shifting reflection and learning through curiosity and playful interaction. The experience taught her observation, patience, and gentle exploration. Afternoon rest. After hours of playful exploration, Emily guided Clover back to the soft blanket she had brought along. Clover curled up, wet paws tucked under her body, tail wrapped around her, and purred softly. "You were amazing today, Clover," Emily whispered, stroking her fur. "Your first river adventure, and you faced it with curiosity, courage, and joy." Clover responded with a soft chirp, nuzzling Emily's hand, her tiny body vibrating with contentment. Lessons learned by the water. This first river adventure was more than just fun. Clover learned about new textures, moving water, reflections, and cautious exploration. She learned to observe, test boundaries, and trust her instincts, skills she would carry into every adventure yet to come. Emily watched her closely, pride and affection glowing in her eyes. Every new experience strengthened Clover's confidence, curiosity, and resilience. Heading home. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light across the water, Emily carried Clover back to the car. The kitten's golden eyes were half closed in contentment, tiny purrs escaping from her soft chest. Back home, Clover curled up on her favorite blanket, dreaming of rippling water, drifting leaves, and sparkling reflections. The world was full of wonder, and she had only begun to explore it. Emily whispered softly, "You're growing braver, little one, learning something new every day. I can't wait for your next adventure." The morning sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. The world looked vast, full of possibilities and adventures waiting to be discovered. Today was special, not just any ordinary day. Today, Clover was going on her very first mountain adventure. Emily packed a small bag with essentials, a blanket, water, treats, and Clover's favorite toys. Clover, perched curiously in the carrier, flicked her tail in excitement. She had faced snow, rivers, trees, and playdates before, but a mountain hike was something entirely new. The journey begins. The car ride was filled with anticipation. Clover's golden eyes watched the changing landscape with wonder. Rolling fields, distant trees, winding paths, and finally, the looming silhouette of the mountain in the distance. Emily spoke softly. "Are you ready, Clover? Today, we'll climb together, step by step." Clover chirped softly, as if answering, her tiny body vibrating with excitement. She was ready for a new challenge. First steps on the mountain. The base of the mountain was dotted with rocks, shrubs, and uneven paths. Clover stepped carefully onto the soft earth, sniffing each stone, her paws testing the ground. Emily held the leash loosely, allowing her the freedom to explore while ensuring her safety. Clover paused frequently, her golden eyes scanning upward. The mountain seemed huge, its peak hidden behind low-hanging clouds. But Clover's adventurous spirit was undeterred. She crouched, stretched, and took her first confident steps along the trail, learning balance and courage. As the trail rose, Clover encountered rocks and roots that required careful navigation. She leapt onto a low boulder, balanced on a narrow ledge, and crawled under a fallen branch, learning to adapt to her environment. Emily encouraged her gently. "Good girl, Clover. One step at a time. You're doing so well." Each small challenge taught Clover patience, courage, and the importance of careful observation. She learned to trust her instincts while keeping Emily's guidance in mind. Discovering new sights. Halfway up the mountain, Clover paused on a flat ledge, her golden eyes wide with wonder. From this vantage point, the valley stretched below, dotted with trees, rivers, and distant fields. Birds soared overhead, their wings catching the sunlight, and the breeze carried the scents of pine and earth. Clover crouched low, tail swishing slowly, absorbing every new sensation. Emily knelt beside her, pointing out small details. "Look, Clover. Do you see the birds? And the river winding down there?" Clover responded with a soft chirp, exploring the ledge carefully, pawing at leaves and pebbles, and occasionally glancing down at the incredible view below. A small challenge. Near a steeper section, the trail narrowed with a drop on one side. Clover froze, her ears back slightly, whiskers twitching nervously. Emily knelt beside her. "It's okay, little one. You can do it. I'll be right here," Emily whispered. Clover took a deep breath, well, as deep as a tiny kitten could, and stepped forward, one cautious paw at a time. Her claws gripped the earth securely, tail balancing her, golden eyes focused on the path ahead. Step by step, she crossed the narrow trail. When she reached Emily's side, she chirped triumphantly, her confidence shining bright. Exploring the mountain. As they ascended, Clover explored rocks, low shrubs, and small crevices. She leapt onto boulders, sniffed pine cones, and even chased a drifting leaf that danced along the wind. Each new movement and discovery filled her with joy and a sense of accomplishment. Emily laughed softly. "You're amazing, Clover. Look how brave you've become. Clover responded with playful leaps and tiny pounces, her energy seemingly limitless. The mountain became a playground, a place for adventure, learning, and courage. Reaching the summit. Finally, after careful steps and small adventures along the way, Clover and Emily reached a flat summit. The view was breathtaking. The entire valley spread below them, rivers glittering in the sunlight, forests stretching into the distance, and distant mountains peeking through the clouds. Clover's golden eyes widened. She stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the wind, ears flicking, whiskers quivering in awe. She had reached the highest point she had ever been. Emily knelt beside her, hugging Clover gently. "You did it, little one. Your first mountain adventure, and look at this view. Isn't it incredible?" Clover purred loudly, brushing against Emily's arm, her tiny body vibrating with happiness. She had faced challenges, learned patience, and discovered the thrill of reaching new heights. Reflecting on the journey. As they rested on the summit, Emily spoke softly. "Every adventure teaches us something, Clover. Today, you learned courage, perseverance, and the joy of exploration. You've grown so much." Clover nestled into Emily's lap, golden eyes half closed, tail curled around her tiny body. The wind ruffled her fur gently, carrying the scent of pine and fresh earth. She had conquered fear, embraced curiosity, and discovered the beauty of the world from above. Heading down. The journey down the mountain was calmer, filled with careful steps and quiet exploration. Clover seemed more confident, leaping over small rocks, sniffing interesting plants, and occasionally glancing at Emily with trusting eyes. Emily smiled. "You were amazing today, Clover. Every step you took was brave and smart." Clover responded with a soft chirp, a contented purr rumbling in her chest. She had learned that the world was vast, beautiful, and full of adventures waiting for her curiosity and courage. A triumphant return. Back at home, Clover curled up on her favorite blanket, exhausted but happy. Her golden eyes glimmered with satisfaction, and her tiny chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm. Emily stroked her fur gently. "You've had so many adventures, Clover. Snow, rivers, trees, mountains. You've grown so much. I'm so proud of you." Clover purred softly, nuzzling Emily's hand, dreaming of the trails, peaks, and new horizons she had discovered. The end of the adventure. This mountain adventure marked the culmination of Clover's journey, from a tiny, curious kitten exploring her home, to a brave adventurer discovering the wonders of the world. She had faced fears, learned lessons, built confidence, and experienced the joy of exploration. Emily smiled, knowing that Clover's journey of growth and discovery had reached a beautiful milestone. Clover had learned that courage, curiosity, and trust could open doors to extraordinary experiences. And though this was the final chapter of this story, the adventures in Clover's life would continue, full of wonder, love, and endless possibilities. The end.